Hi, I'm Todd Dybas with Sports Press Northwest. Doug Farrar, our pro football writer, to my left, and we're here just back from Jake Locker's pro day at the University of Washington. Well, Jake Locker and a few other guys, getting a
excellent linebacker as well.
Getting a look at all the scouts are there to get a look at Locker and some of these other guys, and of course, like we were just saying, Locker, the prime person that they were there to look at. His accuracy, always a hot topic. How did he look today to you? You talked to some other NFL people as well, and what did they think?
Yeah, I spoke to Rob Rang, the highly esteemed draft expert from NFLDraftScout.com. Rob's in constant contact with coaches and scouts. I was at the Senior Bowl week of practice to watch Jake there, where I thought he looked like about a third-round pick. I was at the Combine. I was doing the pool report, so I saw him against quarterbacks like Colin Kaepernick and Andy Dalton, guys like that. And I thought the work with Ken O'Brien has definitely helped. You could tell in Indianapolis that he was spinning the ball better. His release point was more consistent. His footwork was better. I've always said that from the snap to the throw, he's NFL ready. His mechanics are fine. It's just always been a matter of getting the ball out of his hands consistently. You could tell in Indianapolis that it was getting better, and today he completed 38 of 40 passes. The only passes he did not complete were 2 9 routes, 2 deep routes that he overthrew. His receiver saved his butt on a couple of outs. Right. The one thing I think he still struggles with is when he's coming back or when he's rolling boot action. If he stops and then tries to throw at a 45-degree angle either this way or against his body, it's like he has to take a minute and get the set point. He's not really sure of it. But from 7 to 17 yards, which has always been kind of his mystery meat point where you didn't know what was going to happen, he's always had the arm to make any throw. But now you can see that consistently he understands the mechanics, he understands the release point, he understands the timing of the receivers. Obviously, it helped that he's familiar with the guys he threw with today, where he wasn't in Mobile or in Indianapolis. But the difference from the Senior Bowl to the Combine to today was pretty intense. And Rob Rang agreed. I spoke to him for about 10 minutes right after, and he said, he's been going to pro days and combines for 10 years. And he said it wasn't quite the Sam Bradford or Mark Sanchez pro day, but given where he was just 2 months ago, it's pretty impressive. I think, to me, if there was any question he's a first-round quarterback, those questions were eradicated today.
Yeah, and the 2 passes that were incomplete, he threw the ball about 70 yards in the air, kind of at his convenience.
Yeah, the other thing that really impressed me was that he's now able to take a little off the ball. And we saw this on the out routes where the post corner at the Combine, he did this as well. He would throw with better touch and a nicer arc as opposed to just jetting everything in. He's becoming, I wrote on Sports Press yesterday that he's an athlete trying to become a quarterback. That gap is decreasing. You can see, it's not just train windows going by where you see the Jake Locker. You see more of the quarterback that threw that beautiful fade to Curse in the Apple Cup. You're starting to see more of that guy.
Yeah, I spoke with University of Washington quarterbacks coach Doug Nussmeier afterward, and he's always said and reiterated today that Jake's best time and best ability is still in front of him. And we heard head coach Steve Sarkisian on Monday essentially equate Locker to a sophomore coming out early for the draft. And he was making that statement based on the 2 years alone that he's been in this more pro style offense and been asked to deal with many more things. And even Coach Nussmeier today referenced that Jake used to be a wing T quarterback, and oddly that doesn't seem to prepare you for the NFL these days.
I found that to be the case, yeah.
We also saw Mason Foster, someone who's kind of moved up as this process has gone along, and we saw Mason today increase his 40, do some agility drills and other strength and leaping and other meat market things that they put these guys through. What'd you think, and what'd you hear about him?
Well, I've been kind of on the Mason Foster bandwagon. I think there are guys on the West Coast, Raheem Moore of UCLA, Stephen Paea of Oregon State, and certainly Foster, who do not get the game tape recognition they should because they're on the wrong coast, so to speak. Foster, to me, has always been more a game tape guy than a measurables guy. When I spoke to Rob Rang today, he said basically the same thing. This is not a guy who's going to blow you away with the Combine stuff. He looked okay at the Senior Bowl. He looked okay at the Combine. He looked okay in the drills. But if you turn on the game tape, you're going to see the guy who led the Pac-10 in tackles with not a really great supporting cast around him.
Right.
What I was looking at today, because I would equate him with Clint Session of the Indianapolis Colts, or some of the faster linebackers you frequently see with the Jacksonville Jaguars or Tennessee Titans, teams that play a lot of 4-3 nickel, where they'll substitute out one linebacker or put a defensive back in, and what that means is instead of 3 linebackers, you have 2, and those 2 linebackers have to be a lot rangier. So I'm looking at Foster through this whole Senior Bowl Combine Pro Day process. I want to see his horizontal spacing. I want to see how much range he has, and I was specifically looking less at the L drills and the 40, because I know he's a 4'6", 4'7" guy. That doesn't really concern me. But I'm looking at his back and forth this way, his lateral agility, and I think he's got the lateral agility to be probably a 3rd round to 4th round pick, but in time, as Clint Session was, as some of these other guys are, your David Harris's and such, can be a starting nickel linebacker in the NFL. Nickel linebacker, that's not the pejorative title it used to be, because as I said, so many teams are playing so much more nickel that you're in a 4-2-5 instead of a 4-3. And those 2 guys have to cover the ground that 3 linebackers covered a decade ago. I think Foster's on pace to do that.
Yeah, and he seems destined, as a lot of young linebackers are, to play some special teams wherever he lands initially, and that's something that he did and did well for the University of Washington last year, and he's certainly not a guy who's going to carry a big ego into that and have any issues with that. He even talked about playing special teams today and how much he actually likes it. So it's kind of comical to hear these high-end guys who embrace something like that, and they were lucky that he did that last year, and he's lucky that he did that last year, because now when NFL people look at him, they can see tape of him on special teams and know that this guy knows what he's doing, is willing to do it, and if we take him, we can develop him through some special teams opportunities. So.
Right. The other thing I was at Athletes Performance in Los Angeles for some features I was doing last week, and that's where he's training. So I was able to talk to his trainer, Travell Gaines, some of the people he's been working with, and they say he's a total lunch pail kid. I mean, he comes in there every day just ready to work and work and work, and there's no ego. You know this because you cover the team. He's there to do it. He told me today after the drills, when we'll talk, I asked him, what did you learn at API? He said, working on specific things. Those things really showed up, and I think, it was a big day for UW athletics, for football, I think, in general, because it had been so long before Donald Butler last year that they even had anyone draftable.
Right.
I mean, Jake Locker, until Chris Polk gets drafted next year, Jake Locker will not have thrown to anyone with a draftable grade.
Right.
So when you get 2 pro days in a row like this, it speaks to what Sarkisian's doing, and it speaks to that turnaround after, tie .0, and kind of what they have going forward. I think this was a real, maybe not as much of a benchmark as the Holiday Bowl win, but it was a big step for the program overall, as well as these 2 kids.
Yeah, and to keep that going, as we talk about those 2 kids, that kind of leads us into the voids that they leave on the team heading into this year. Washington started spring football Tuesday. We got our first look at kind of the Nick Montana, Keith Price competition, as it's been labeled, but those guys will tell you it's not much of a competition, that they're actually pretty good friends off the field. They're lifting buddies. They don't talk specifically about the quarterback competition, but someone's going to have to take Locker's place. So how Washington handles that, and the supporting cast that those 2 guys are lucky enough to now have around them, where they should have a reasonable defense. Of course, they have Chris Polk in the backfield. Their lives moving in as the new guys are going to be a little easier than if they were still in that 0-12, 3 and whatever bad news era that you previously referenced. That they have a good supporting cast around them. So it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of there. It's also going to be interesting to see who fills Mason Foster's spot. And Victor Iewa, who was also at Pro Day today, he is gone. So there's 2 linebacker spots to be filled by Washington beginning this spring and heading into next fall. They lost big chunks when they lost those guys, but they're hoping to figure it out. They're hoping for more Pro Days. Steve Sarkisian spoke about that afterward today. Of course, he would love more Pro Days because that means they're producing more pros. Yes. And the program is moving in the correct direction. So based on what we saw today, 2 guys heading to the NFL did well for themselves, did even more, and helped just solidify and even move up their reputations.